So I want to thank you for taking the time out. I know you're all the way over there in Ireland,
Yeah.
and a little bit about yourself, and I'll just read off your bio here. You're the founder of PSI, PureStream,
Yeah.
which is a professional controlled remote viewer, and you also do CRV Remote Viewing training, which stands for Controlled Remote Viewing, and that you're one of only 5 CRV trainers worldwide, and you've been recognized by your trainer Lyn Buchanan, a former military trainer, for the now classified 23-year top secret U.S. intelligent remote viewing program, commonly known as Project Stargate, and that you've also been an international speaker and presented on CRV, which again is controlled remote viewing topics, at different forums and conferences in Ireland, the UK, France, the United States, in Las Vegas and New Orleans. And you're also a board member of the International Remote Viewing Association, which is irva.org, a not-for-profit body. And that was formed by scientists and military team involved in the development of controlled remote viewing to promote public education and research, and that you're also a regular participant in the Husick Group remote viewing operational projects. And by training, your background is architecture, and you're an innovative consultant, a business strategist, a designer of strategic risk scenario exercises, and also business war games.
Yeah.
And you're also on the chair of a bunch of foundations that provide trauma healing to survivors of earthquake and natural disasters.
Well, just the one. It was an organization called the Sarah Bird Foundation.
Okay.
We're in the process of closing that at the moment, but that is correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy to have you on, and
thank you.
I would love to hear your story, how you got into remote viewing. I know you told me a little bit about a book that you picked up, and one of the groups that I posted this in is energy healers and people that work with energy. And so, I think there's a lot of benefits from both on that dimension and that level, but also on a strategic level. And the other thing that really came to mind was the fact that we're also gifted in many ways that a lot of us never realize because we never look inward versus outward. So thanks for coming on, and I'll turn it over to you. Tell me a little bit about what you love about what you do and how you found it.
Let's see. I've always been interested in things that don't fit the jigsaw puzzle. The pieces that get left to the side that people try to ignore. But I've always realized that those missing pieces are always the starting point for the next evolution or the next development of an idea or process.
Yep.
And I was always intrigued by, what makes us tick, what makes us what we are, why do we do the things we do, why do we not do the things we do, why do we don't do the things we should and the things we shouldn't, and all that kind of stuff. And so always interested in personal development. And for a number of years, I went through exploring the whole area of energy psychology, belief systems, always fascinated by the whole area of psychic development and, deep intuitive experiences that people have. And for a long time felt that, I'd been pushed out of the psychic tree. I never had any of those amazing experiences that other people seem to have. So back around 2002, I was in a bookstore and I saw a book called Psychic Warrior. And I thought this was one of those Dan Millman type, Way of the Shaman type books or something by Fred Alan Wolf.
Right.
And I pick up this book and I start reading it, flicking through, and it's telling the story of this top secret military program that ran for 23 years, got $25 million in funding, all through the intelligence agencies in the US. And they basically reverse engineered how psychic functioning works in order to create psychic spies, because they believed that they were in a psychic warfare situation and a psychic gap with the Soviet Union. And so there was a lot of concern in the agencies as to whether this was true, if the Soviets could actually do this stuff. And then the questions were, well, if they can do it, can we do it? Can we protect ourselves from them? If we can do it, can we use it against them? And so that's where the whole program grew out of. And you've got to remember, like, this is 1970s, 71, 72. There's no Google, there's no YouTube, there's no, you know,
Drones.
yeah, well, all that kind of stuff. But there's no, like, they're very poor intelligence gathering systems. You had aerial photographs coming from U-2 planes, or you had people on the ground that were trying to get into facilities and locations as spies.
Right.
And, you know, the Cold War, we all expected any moment the bomb was going to drop. We were all going to get fried, both here in Europe and in the US and in the Soviet Union. And so everybody was trying to get whatever competitive advantage that they could. And so this book told the story about how this unit was formed, how it came into action with the Iranian hostage crisis, where there was no way of getting any information about the hostages, and yet the remote viewers were able to provide information about the hostages to the process that they used. And then it went on, it was used to find things like the first Typhoon-class Russian submarine. So for anyone that's seen The Hunt for Red October, that movie with Sean Connery, you know, that's a boomer, right? That's a Typhoon-class submarine, the biggest submarine the Russians ever built. And over a number of sessions, you know, one particular remote viewer, Joe McMonigal, provided all the information about that. So much so that the agencies were able to park a satellite over the location that he'd identified. And on the date that he said this would be launched, there in a channel was the first Typhoon-class Russian submarine. And that thing went out on its sea trials. And it went out for 4 years. It was never seen again for 4 years. Apparently, and it had enough nuclear, I mean, it had the equivalent capability of the UK, of the United Kingdom's arsenal.
Wow.
Now, that thing could have been parked 10 miles off Washington, D.C., and nobody would have known it was there. And for that, Joe received I think it was the Legion of Honor. It's either Legion of Merit or Legion of Honor. I can't remember which it is, but it's the highest award you can receive from Congress as a soldier in peacetime. And, you know, so that's only one story in many stories.
Right.
About how it was used.
What are some of the benefits of remote viewing, and how do people use remote viewing, and how would you explain it to somebody that has no idea what remote viewing is?
So remote viewing it's basically using a muscle that we all have. We all have the ability to access information outside of our body. Right? It's called non-local awareness. Like any muscle, you can train it, you can tune it to higher degrees of agility. And what the military guys and the scientists at Stanford Research Institute did was they basically formalized the process, the paper-based pen and paper process, that anybody could sit down with a couple of sheets of paper, be given a blind reference. They wouldn't be given any information about the target, and yet they could describe locations, people, places, events, distant in space and time, and you know, to varying degrees of accuracy, which all then fed into an information gathering process. How it's used today in the public realm. I'm sorry, this was declassified in 1995, so there were 40,000 documents released by the CIA, which again, they're freely available online now at a number of different locations. So you can see the reports, you can see the documents, it's all there, the research that they were doing on other countries. But it came into the public realm in 1995. And at that point then, former military trainers were able to go out and train the public. So they started setting up their own businesses, training people. And, you know, thousands of people have trained in it to date. They use it for things, I mean, the first one is usually personal development. You know, I want to know what I'm truly capable of as a human being.
Yeah.
And that's usually the first one. There are those that want to open up more creative perceptual channels, you know, for creative purposes. There are people who want to use it for technical reasons, engineers who want to use it for solving technical problems, developing prototypes, innovation consultants using it to, again, future cast for new ideas. You know, if we can find a technology from the near future and reverse engineer that process, then that's a very valuable thing to be able to do. There are those who use it for viewing stock market trends. There are those who use it for viewing sports. outcomes, sports games. Are the Lakers going to win on Saturday? That kind of thing. Um, Everybody says, "Oh, what about the lotto? What about the lotteries?" Yeah, you can, but it's a challenging thing to do. Right? It requires a lot of practice. But there are people who regularly make money on the pick three, pick fours that you guys have in the US, and it's used for archaeology. So you're in a location, you've got a big empty field, you've got a short amount of time. Where do you dig? Well, you can use your ground penetrating radar, but that's going to take you some time. But if the viewers can not only describe where you should dig, but what you can expect to find there, that's a very valuable thing to be able to do.
Do you feel that somebody could locate, minerals and gold veins and?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's used for all of that, for geological searches, searching for oil, searching for minerals, searching for other resources. Real estate agents, realtors, as you call them in the States, can use it for identifying which properties they should actually go after. Which ones they should promote more to get them the best results.
What kind of specifics would somebody get in the real estate agent if they were buying real estate, like the worth or whether that house is desirable? Or
well, if it's somebody buying property, it's should I be buying this house? So what they can do is you can go through a process where you can move forward in time and describe the experience of being in that house. And if you're having any problems, they will show up there. So that might warn you off buying it. For those selling properties, realtor agents, if they've got 3 properties to promote or 10 properties to promote, well, which ones should we focus on? Then they can use the process to narrow that down and focus on those that will give them the best returns. Right. Equally, business owners can use it. We've got 3 business strategies that we could follow. Which one should we go for, A, B, or C? And again, you can explore down timelines with each of those. Strategy A might look really good, but you find in 6 months' time it's going to hit a regulatory blockage.
Yep.
Plan C might look like a long, slow burn. Plan B might look really good, but what you find when you go down the timelines in 2 years' time, some new technology comes out that basically kills your project. So what you would do in that case is you can abandon A, you will continue with Plan B, because that's going to give you 2 good years. But meanwhile, you're preparing Plan C, because that's going to be your long burner. Because you will know that in 2 years' time there's going to be a problem with this business. And so therefore you're preparing your backup plan even before your competitors realize there's a problem.
So explain timeline. So you're saying that literally you could jump a timeline into the future or even back into the past? And
your subconscious doesn't differentiate between distance and time because it's simply just another dimension. So a monitor working with a remote viewer can say move 10 yards at the target, describe what you see or what you hear. Or you could say move 10 minutes at the target or move 10 years at the target. And you can move backwards or forwards in time. Now it's easier to move backwards because stuff has happened, so it's there.
Right.
It's harder to move forward in time and be accurate because of the potential timelines are diverging at that point. All the potential options are diverging. So the further forward you go, the more likely you are to be off on a tangential timeline to the present point where you actually are. But sometimes it can work really, really well.
Now, when you train people with remote viewing, do you feel that anybody needs to have any kind of qualifications?
No,
any
absolutely not.
Training in meditation or energy work?
This was designed to train grunts. Okay. So they came up with a pen and paper process where you sit somebody down, you put pen and paper in front of them, you walk them step by step through a process. So as my trainer Lyn said to me, if you believe that you need to go and do a 1 hour hemi-sync meditation with binaural beats before you can remote view, that will be your truth.
Right.
But it's not true. Right? It's just a belief that you create. If you believe you have to chant mantras for 20 minutes, that becomes part of your belief system, but it also becomes a block. When you've got a 4-star general staring you and saying, we need this information now, you don't say to your general, sorry, I got to go and do a 40-minute deep trance meditation. Like it's It just doesn't work that way in the military. So what they did was they stripped away all of the belief systems and they just looked at the actual process itself and said, right, how can we formalize this in a step-by-step process? And that's exactly what they did. And it is surprisingly easy to learn. You know, I've had people with severe brain trauma, like frontal brain trauma, who, like one guy came to a class and Lyn was the trainer on the class. I was assisting and I was quite nervous about this, you know, that this guy was coming and was he going to get the benefit out of it? And yet we found that when he did his session work and we showed him then the feedback photographs,
Yep.
he was hitting the target. You know, not in the level of detail that somebody else might have, again, because of the traumatic accident that he had. But he was drawing things, he was writing things down that clearly indicated he was getting information about the target.
Right. Wow.
So what we say is there are only two types of people that are hard to train. There are those that say, you're all going to burn in hell for this, you know, this is all the work of the Satan and the devil, and you're doing the devil's work, right? So that's, the belief system there is so strong, it's not going to allow this to work for itself. Then you've got the other extreme, which is, you know, those people for whom two flies climbing up a wall is a psychic experience.
Right.
And the problem there is they lack discernment. So their imagination goes wild because they turn everything into a psychic event, when in fact a lot of it is just imagination. So they end up getting in their own way because of that lack of discernment. But for the 95% of people in the middle, yeah, we've trained all sorts of people, and everybody comes with a different reason, and they get what they want out of it. But again, the thing is, you can show somebody in 3 days how to do this, but at the end of the day, like learning any martial art, you know, and we say this is a martial art for the mind and the body, you've got to practice. You know, you got to put in your exercises, you got to train, because you build your portfolio of experiences, and in doing so, then you become more and more sensitive to those subtle signals that the subconscious is giving you through your body. That you become more and more aware, and you become more and more sensitive to the ambience of the place that you're in, and you can feel changes taking place even though you can't see them.
Talk a little bit about the subconscious. I know, you know, as you're training people, what's some of the process that you go through in your training? And then you had shared something with me yesterday about the difference between, you know, there's the subconscious, there's your imagination,
yeah,
and how to distinguish between those two, because that's really important. I think there's a lot of people walking through life on autopilot and they don't even know where thoughts come from. And,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we have, let me see, what's the quickest way to explain this? So we have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. So our conscious mind thinks it's in control, right? We're operating now through our conscious mind. We are handling maybe, you know, 4, 5, 6 things at the same time if we're lucky, you know, if we can multitask. But, you know, you're listening to me, you might be checking your computer, you might be slightly aware of your environment. Your subconscious is doing everything else, right? It's handling your autonomic nervous system, your white blood cell count, your respiratory system, your blood pressure, the volume in your eyes, your hearing. It's handling your relationship to gravity so that you don't fall out of the chair. It's scanning your complete environment, but it's also the one that can access this non-local information. So if you think that in the room that you're in now, every radio station in the world is beaming through that room, you could tune into any one of those radio stations if you had the correct type of receiver. So in effect, your brain works in the same way. We exist as quantum beings in this field of quantum information. If anybody tells you they know where remote viewing comes from, where the information comes from, they don't. We simply don't know. All we know is that it is possible to access it. And the subconscious seems to be the part of the brain that can access that. So it is the receiver that we tune in to go and get the information that we want. So you don't go into any out-of-body trance. There's no astral traveling. There's no semi-lucid states involved. You're totally wide awake, and you're listening. You're paying attention to your body, and you're paying attention to the subtle perceptions that you start to pick up.
Right.
So it's getting the information. Now it's trying to communicate that. So that works in pictures. It works in sensations, emotions. It's trying to communicate that to your conscious mind. But the problem is, it's like trying to get an Apple Mac to talk to a PC. Right? Two totally different operating systems.
Yeah.
Conscious mind is logical, rational, really good at organizing things in linear order and sequences. It creates time in our head and allows us to, and it's the only one that can report, right? It speaks, it talks, it tells us things. The subconscious gives us these subtle impressions. And if you think of this as operating at, like, say, 2,000 bits per second, your subconscious is operating at the equivalent of about 4 billion bits per second.
Wow.
So it's trying to communicate all this information to Dodo over here.
Right.
And the problem is that, they don't talk to, they can't talk to each other. There's no connection. Psychologists talk about the lemon as this barrier between the two. It's not that there's a barrier, it's that there's no connection between them. It's two totally different operating systems. So the subconscious, being the clever thing that it is, realizes that the one thing they share in common is the body. So what it will do is it will take control of various functions within the body to create perceptions that come into your conscious awareness. So the extreme version of that is your skin crawling up the back of your neck, right? When it's screaming at you, danger, danger, danger. And it does something so extreme that you just totally pay attention. Or that feeling, that gut feeling in your stomach.
Right.
The other example I like to give is, the guy who's walking along, checking his phone, just about to step across off the curb. And next thing he hears his grandmother call his voice. And he turns and he looks around. And as he does so, the bus flies past, right? That would have killed him stone dead if he stepped out off the curb. And he goes away going, oh my God, my grandmother came back from the dead and she called out my voice and she saved me. She didn't harass. What happened was you weren't paying attention, but your subconscious was. And it was scanning your environment and it knew the bus was coming. So
Right.
it went, holy crap, I rely on this body for my continued existence, therefore I need to stop this guy. So it goes into your memory banks, finds something that it knows you will pay attention to, and then takes control of your auditory system, creates the sound in your ear that you believe you just heard your grandmother's voice. No, you haven't. But what's happened is your subconscious has kept you alive because you are the meat taxi that it needs in order to experience this physical reality. So
it's pretty complex.
It's complex. It's very subtle, but it's also very simple when you think about it. They've got two different personalities. Your subconscious and your conscious mind have two totally different personalities, and that comes out when you're doing remote viewing, because you find things that you're personally interested in don't show up in your remote viewing sessions, but other stuff does that you're not interested in because it's interested in that stuff. I mean, again, we don't know why, but it's just the way it is. And,
what's one of the I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time now.
Since 2006. Yeah.
Right. What's the most incredible, eye-opening experience that you've had within this field of remote viewing?
Oh, which one?
Is there one that was just mind-blowing to you where you're just like, I can't even believe this?
Well, the first one, apart from some of the earlier sessions where you're in class and you're doing workshops and training, and you're getting pulling out these feedback photographs going, oh my God, I didn't believe that was actually could be there.
Right.
But the one that really stood out for me was the first time I was doing a practice target, and the target was a location, an event at a location or an activity at a location. That's all I knew. Right? So that could be anywhere in space and time.
Right.
And anywhen in space and time. So I find myself viewing this structure. It's man-made. It's domestic. It's and I'm starting to realize it's some kind of Adobe structure. Okay, so it's an Adobe structure, thick walls, big heavy timber beams overhead, and I'm an architect. I'm interested in buildings, and I've always been curious about Adobe construction, and so I'm working away. I'm writing stuff down, and then I thought, I wonder what the wall feels like on the inside. and I felt my hand go into a wall, and I could actually feel the dirt, the grit and the dirt inside the wall.
Oh wow.
And then I made a note of it, and I went, "Holy crap!" I just put my, you know, in my head, I just put my hand inside, and I could feel. I mean, it was so kinesthetic. I can even feel it on my hand today when I think about the memory of that. It was so tangible.
Yeah.
So that was one.
And what was the location? Do you remember what the location was?
The location was actually Lyn Buchanan's house, where he was. There was a Japanese film crew at his. So this was a photograph in an envelope, but it was a Japanese film crew at his house filming students doing remote viewing sessions on
Yeah.
camera. So that was the event that I was asked to describe. And even when I look back to my session, there are outlines of people that I drew in that session that are actually there in the photographs.
Oh wow.
I mean, again, the detail you can get is quite extraordinary. I was asked to do another one, this was a really weird one. I was asked to do one, which was, again, a location.
Yeah.
No idea where or when it was. I described this very barren, open location. And there is this thing flying through the air, but it's falling at the same time. And I'm getting very conflicting perceptions because my imagination is going, oh, it's a plane, or it's but then another part of me is going, oh no, it's like a cruise liner, it's full of people on different levels. But this thing came in and dipped and then plowed into the ground, and I thought, oh, hang on, maybe this is that famous air crash back in the Andes, back in the 1970s when the football team crashed up there. Your imagination is trying to make sense of all this. But What we do is we teach you to just park all that stuff to one side. You learn to tell the difference between what's your imagination and what's actual data that you're perceiving. So I get this visual sense of this thing plowing into the ground, and then there's a huge spray up of debris, but it's happening like it's in slow motion. And I go, this is really weird, because you'd expect things to be going really fast.
Right.
But they're kind of tumbling slowly through I won't say to the air, as I thought it was. And again, I just started describing how this thing had an internal problem. There was a liquid spraying in a container in a room that people couldn't get into because it was too poisonous, and it was one of the reasons why this thing crashed. So I have no idea what the target is, right? Absolutely no idea. The feedback photograph that I received was of a debris field photographed by the Apollo 15 astronauts on the moon.
Oh wow.
So that was a real wow moment. And there are photographs from the Apollo 15 of this huge object on the back of the moon, which are still there up on the NASA site. You can go and see them.
Right.
And it's about 4 kilometers long. Like, it's huge. It's an enormous thing, which people don't like talking about.